Hello, the internet. The Film Optimist here, Glenn Williams. It's been a long time since I've done a video like this where I've just tried to talk off the top of my head. Typically, I like to be a lot more scripted. I like to have a lot more idea of what's coming up in a video. But we lost a really big name recently and someone who's had a lot of effect specifically on media that I love. So I didn't want to just let this moment pass completely unremarked. And I wanted to talk a little bit about things that had been going around in my mind recently. For those of you who are not aware, yesterday on July the 5th, 2021, we lost Richard Donner. And Richard Donner was a major film director. He was born in 1930 in the Bronx. His father was a furniture manufacturer. Like a lot of people who are in the entertainment industry, when he first headed to Los Angeles, he thought he was going to be an actor. But very quickly, he shifted into a behind-the-scenes position. It turned out he had real talent for working behind the cameras. He was an executive at Desilu. And when he began directing, he directed for television. And some of the shows that he directed for just include Get Smart, Have Gun Will Travel, The Fugitive, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Gilligan's Island. If you have ever watched any classic television, chances are good that you've watched at least a couple of episodes that Richard Donner directed. And when Richard Donner moved into film, he directed some of the major films that we think of in genre filmmaking today. The Omen was one of his. He directed Scrooged. He directed Lady Hawk. He directed Lethal Weapon. And of course, the thing that everybody has been talking about is the fact that he also directed Superman the Motion Picture, the first of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. And it's with good reason that people are talking about that movie, because that movie set the recipe for modern superhero filmmaking. If you go back and you look at superhero media before Superman the Motion Picture, most of it is very campy, it's very self-aware, it's very cognizant of the fact that it comes out of a comic book. And I'm not saying that that's a bad approach to the material. After all, the Adam West, Burt Ward, Batman and Robin is still a classic in my mind. But when you only have one single approach to the material, things stagnate. When Richard Donner took control of Superman the Motion Picture, he approached it and said, I am not going to treat this as automatically a goofy, campy film just because it comes from a comic book. I'm going to treat this story as seriously and respectfully as I would a story that comes from any other source material. And I think you even see that in the name of the movie, Superman the Motion Picture. It's not just Superman, it's Superman the Motion Picture. You're coming to see a major event. You're coming to see something that is not a cartoon, it's not a movie serial, it's not a prolonged episode of a television series. This is a movie on par with any other movie you will see this year. And that approach carried through into the work of Tim Burton on Batman. Christopher Nolan has said that Richard Donner's approach to Superman was a huge influence on how he took the role of directing Batman. And Kevin Feige, in charge of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has said that Richard Donner's Superman was a huge influence on how he worked. So this is a man without whom modern superhero movies would be a very different piece of media. And consequently, a lot of our summer blockbusters would be very different as well. So it's worth taking a moment to pause and reflect on the massive effect that Richard Donner had on our modern film industry. And the reason that I had been thinking about Donner even before the news of his passing came out was that I had been considering the realities of the Snyder Cut. Again, for those of you who may not be familiar with this, the Snyder Cut has to do with the Justice League film that came out a couple of years ago. Zack Snyder, the original director, was removed from the production and was replaced with Joss Whedon, who reshot a lot of the movie. And after a long campaign online, Warner Brothers decided that they would, quote-unquote, release the Snyder Cut to their HBO Max streaming service. Now, I say, quote-unquote, release the Snyder Cut because that's what people had been saying to Warner Brothers to do. But here's where this had taken up residence rent-free in my mind. The Snyder Cut is not a cut. And it was not as simple as just releasing the Snyder Cut. There was no finished Snyder Cut to just release. In order to get a Snyder Cut to put on HBO Max, Warner Brothers paid a lot of money to Zack Snyder to return and finish the work that he had been doing on the movie, which included not just paying him, but also giving him the budget to reshoot scenes with his preferred version of the script. It involved giving him access to financial resources and production resources so that he could complete special effects shots. What I'm saying is all of the time that people were saying, release the Snyder Cut was not a thing that existed that could be released. It was something Warner Brothers had to spend millions of dollars to bring about. And this was in my head thinking about Richard Donner because Richard Donner began work on Superman 2. For those of you who know the Superman movies, that's the one with General Zod, and it has the moment in it where Superman peels the S off the top of his uniform and throws it, and it wraps up one of the bad guys and all of that sort of thing. The thing is, that movie is not Richard Donner's movie. Because partway through production, Warner Brothers decided that they didn't like how he was approaching the story. They didn't like the fact that he was unwilling to be a little bit goofier and a little bit more, in their terms at the time, comic book with the movie. So they fired Richard Donner off of Superman 2, even though he had directed the first film, which had gone on to be a major box office success. So they fired him off of the production, hired a new director. The new director came on, and part of his job that he was given was that he had to reshoot a certain amount of what Donner had already shot in order to put his spin on it so that the film would not have to be split credited to Richard Donner and the director who had taken over. As a result, Superman 2 is a lot goofier, it's a lot campier, it's a lot everything that Richard Donner didn't want a Superman movie to be. So the fans of Richard Donner's work on the first film for a long time complained to Warner Brothers that there was no Richard Donner cut of Superman. And ultimately, Warner Brothers relented. They released to DVD the Richard Donner edit of Superman 2. And here is what is different about this and, say, the Snyder Cut. They didn't give Richard Donner millions of dollars to make his cut. When Richard Donner made Superman 2, the Richard Donner edit, he had to work with what was available in the archives. Part of that was logistical. Part of that was actors had aged, other actors had sadly passed away. It had been literally decades since the movie was released, so there wasn't a lot of ability to go back and do reshoots. And part of it was financial. Warner Brothers wanted a product they could release that wouldn't cost them a lot more money, but it would get a lot of the fans clamoring to purchase a new DVD copy of Superman 2. So if you watch the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, you're going to have a very different experience from watching the Snyder Cut. And that's because Richard Donner had to make do with footage that was shot for rehearsals. He had to make do with makeup tests, costume tests, footage that winds up looking very different from the finished footage that makes up the rest of the movie. And as you watch, it just increases this feeling of sort of an unpolished, unfinished work. And I had been thinking about this because it had occurred to me that technology has shifted a lot since the Donner edit was released. So we now have technology that, yeah, you can't call in Christopher Reeve to do a reshoot, but with the permission and input of the Reeve estate, you could bring in a body double and use CGI machine learning techniques to create a new scene, perhaps with the audio from the rehearsal tapes, in order to actually have a finished scene with Christopher Reeve in the correct costume. All of these things are possible now, and probably would cost less to produce overall than the Snyder Cut did. But even though that's just a ridiculous idea that I had off the top of my head, it feels very sad now to look at that and realize that even that is not a thing that is going to happen. Because with Richard Donner passing, anything that is done now to fix the Donner cut is not necessarily going to be what Richard Donner wanted in the film. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it still would be a worthwhile exercise. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think that Warner Brothers should spend a few $1,000,000 and polish the Donner cut? Hey, look at that. Hashtag polish the Donner cut. That could work. Like I said, I just wanted to take a moment here on YouTube, on this channel, and make certain that we did note and reflect on the passing of Richard Donner. So thank you very much for taking the time to watch what was a little bit of an off-the-top ramble video. I am working on scripts and shooting new material for the channel. It's a lot more scripted, a lot more structured. I hope you'll enjoy that too. Like I said, drop into the comments and tell me, what do you think? Do you think it's worth going back now with the modern technology and seeing what can be done to make the Donner cut of Superman 2 feel more finished? Do you feel like that would be a fitting tribute to Richard Donner? Or do you feel that we should just let Richard Donner's work that he did during his life lie and let it be what it is? Also, while you're down there commenting, you can, of course, click like and subscribe and all of that fun stuff. And if you have anybody else who you think might want to weigh in on the conversation, feel free to hit that share button, send this out to Twitter, to Facebook, grab the link and send out a note to someone and be like, hey, you should stop by and participate in the conversation, because I really am interested in what people think of this. Alright guys, I will see you soon. I am the Film Optimist, and until next time, watch like it means something.